guys, let's get more news about Dallas Cowboys, but first, don't forget to subs. Next up on the Cleveland Browns quarterback carousel was Kenny Pickett yesterday, and things could have gone better for the veteran. In his first practice taking the first reps, he tossed a couple of interceptions, though he finished with a touchdown. The former Steelers' first-round pick is in what the team is calling a four-way quarterback competition, which will drag on throughout the offseason. Of course, the practical results during OTAs mean a lot less than, well, just about any context. This time of year is when players and teams could be working on any number of things. In other words, things frequently aren't as good or as bad as they might initially appear. Still, it never hurts to look good rather than bad, and I'm sure Kenny Pickett would like those throws back. Not only is he in a competition for a starting job, he is in a competition for a job, period. The Browns simply have too many quarterbacks to keep on their roster, so someone has to go. The Browns acquired Pickett via trade earlier this offseason, but they haven't stopped adding to the room since then. Shortly thereafter, they reunited with Joe Flacco, with whom they had success in 2023. During the 2025 NFL Draft, they added two quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel in round 3 and Shedeur Sanders in round 5. That's not even mentioning Deshaun Watson, whom they still owe tens of millions of dollars as he recovers from injury. If he is healthy enough to play this season, that adds another complication to this entire ordeal. Of course, if the Browns really wanted to, they could always just release him and eat the cost. It should go without saying that Kenny Pickett won't win or lose any jobs in June. But it's also worth a word of caution that he has looked good before. In his second season, he had a near-perfect preseason but followed it up with a regular season that saw him finish on the bench and caused the Steelers to pursue other short-term quarterback options. Earlier this week, ESPN Cleveland radio host Aaron Goldhammer called Kenny Pickett the consensus worst player at OTAs. It appears he may have been referring exclusively to the quarterbacks, but that's still bad. Of course, Goldhammer wasn't at OTAs and didn't see for himself, but he claims he spoke to many people. For whatever that might be worth. While Kenny Pickett didn't work out for the Steelers, the Browns hope they can salvage him. If they can't, however, they haven't exactly put all their eggs in one basket. Flacco is a fine one-year option, and it's possible that one of their rookies develop. If not, then they're likely to have a top 5 draft pick sooner rather than later. Not that drafting quarterbacks in the first round has been a recipe for success for them in the past. Cribe and leave your like. Second-year DB Beanie Bishop Jr. spent most of his time with Steelers media on Wednesday answering questions about a short video he posted showing himself wiping his feet on the pit logo. At one point late in the scrum, a team PR representative had to ask reporters to start asking Steelers-related questions. On those outlets, you will see articles about Bishop focusing on that, rather than his play. Of course, the media has limited access to what the Steelers are doing in OTAs, to be fair. But from what we do know, Bishop appears to be taking all of the first-team reps at nickel cornerback. Given that the Steelers demoted him in the second half of last season, that is not insignificant. While they did not re-sign Cameron Sutton, the Steelers did sign Brandon Echols and Juan Thornhill and drafted Dante Kent. But Beanie Bishop Jr. is, I imagine, the favorite to regain his job. While Thornhill can play in the slot, he is a safety first. Echols has NFL experience, but Bishop may be better. Kent is a rookie via the 7th round, and they drafted him primarily for special teams. When actually addressing his profession, Bishop told reporters that he lost fat this offseason. He pinpointed numerous areas of his game in which he is focusing on improving, and he talked about just how much more comfortable and ahead of the game he feels going into his second season. It's not uncommon for players to make a big jump after their rookie year because the game slows down. It seems Beanie Bishop Jr. already sees that happening for him, and he keeps his ears open, always willing to pick up any tips from the veterans to improve his game. With the new league year underway and the Steelers turning their roster over, it's once again time to take stock. It took a while, but we finally saw some of that change the team talked about after the season ended. Certainly, the move to trade for WRDK Metcalf qualifies as a change, not to mention the accompanying contract. There is still a long way to go before we know what the Steelers team is going to look like. The dust is settled on both free agency and the 2025 NFL Draft. What other moves might the team make? Perhaps unexpected acquisitions or departures. If they traded for one player, they could certainly trade for another, or trade one away. This is a Steelers team starving for postseason success, but how desperate are they for a playoff win in 2025? The Pittsburgh Steelers still appear all in on signing four-time MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers. But depending on who fans listen to, a trade for Atlanta Falcons signal caller Kirk Cousins still makes sense. ESPN's Ben Solak proposed the Steelers acquire Cousins from the Falcons for a conditional 2026 sixth-round pick. In the suggested deal, the draft selection could become a fifth-round pick if Cousins reaches performance conditions. Solak proposed the Steelers also receive cash considerations in the trade. The Steelers' quarterback room is about as thin as one could get ahead of training camp. And if signing Aaron Rodgers falls through, the Steelers must trade for a veteran who can start. Mason Rudolph is currently number 1 on the depth chart, wrote Solak. Cousins is a good fit for coordinator Arthur Smith's offense, which doesn't need its quarterback to move much out of the pocket. This late of a draft pick is close to Cousins' value, and I'd imagine the Falcons are still willing to swallow $20 million, maybe even more, of his salary to get this deal done. However, Solak's ESPN colleague, Kimberly Martin, and Steelers Depot's Ross McCorkle disputed that Cousins fits Pittsburgh's offense. Kirk Cousins has a no-trade clause, so unless Kirk Cousins says, "You know what? Send me to the AFC North where I can get my head bashed in all the time against the Ravens and Browns and all these teams." I just don't see it making sense, argued Martin. To Martin's point, the AFC North is filled with dominant pass rushers. McCorkle argued that's a bad combination with Cousins' lack of mobility. I agree with Martin that the idea of Cousins makes no sense and would reek of desperation, wrote McCorkle. Why Steelers could trade for Kirk Cousins. While Martin and McCorkle made excellent points, Cousins remains a viable trade option for the Steelers because they may very well be desperate. If they are unable to sign Rodgers, then Mason Rudolph will enter 2025 as the team starter. While he is 8-4-1 as a starter in his career for Pittsburgh, Rudolph has never started more than 8 games in a season. In 6 NFL seasons, Rudolph has failed to prove he's anything more than a quality backup. Behind Rudolph, the Steelers have rookie 6th-round quarterback Will Howard. The only other signal caller on Pittsburgh's offseason roster is former 7th-rounder Skylar Thompson. Cousins went 7-7 while averaging 7.7 yards per pass with 18 touchdowns and a league-leading 16 interceptions last season. He will turn 37 years old in August. With Cousins now a full year removed from his Achilles tear, just like Rodgers is, the Steelers could gamble that he will have a little more mobility and be healthier in 2025. Although it's not a good gamble, Solak clearly views it as better than starting Rudolph. Why the Steelers shouldn't acquire Cousins. A Steelers fan might be able to talk themselves into believing acquiring Cousins could work. But there's a long list of reasons why the team shouldn't do it. McCorkle summarized the list well. Cousins was more or less a statue in the pocket last year in Atlanta. Unless the Steelers want to move back to an offense like in Ben Roethlisberger's final years where almost every pass was at or behind the line of scrimmage, it doesn't fit the overall vision for the team, wrote McCorkle. He concluded, "If Rodgers declines to sign, I would much prefer they proceed with Mason Rudolph and save their draft picks and cap space." The two sides of the Cousins debate for Pittsburgh can probably agree on one point. There are only bad options. It explains why the Steelers continue to wait for a decision from Rodgers.